Hello friends, acquaintances, and enemies of all ages, my name is CombatByrd, and today I'll be taking a look at a nostalgia trip of a game beloved by many, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and Knuckles, with a new funky mode. If you had a childhood, you probably played this game at one point or another, but does it still hold up today? Or are most gamers just blinded by nostalgia? Let's put it to the test in today's episode of Is It Still Good? P.S. I hate the title Is It Still Good? But we've come too far to change it. I quickly want to mention that while the game initially came out in 2001 for the Sega Dreamcast, I'll be playing the re-release which came out in 2012. While this isn't a full HD remake or anything, it does allow for widescreen during gameplay, just not cutscenes. I'm specifically playing the Steam version, but for some godforsaken reason the sound effects in this version are extremely loud, so they tend to overpower everything else. Okay, moving on. A unique aspect of Sonic Adventure 2 is that the single player is actually divided into a hero story and a dark story. The stories are completely connected but let you experience two different sides while following our main characters. On the hero side you have Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, while on the dark side you have Shadow, Rouge, and Eggman. The story overall is surprisingly complex, but to simplify it, Eggman wants to take over the world, Shadow wants to help him in the name of revenge, Rouge wants shiny rocks, and all of our heroes want to stop Eggman. Sonic constantly gets mixed up with Shadow because, they're both hedgehogs, I guess. Knuckles and Rouge are treasure hunters, so they end up finding most of the Chaos Emeralds, and Tails and Eggman just kind of do a variety of things.
Hey, look, it's Amy! And Eggman too! What's Amy doing here?
Agreed, Tails. I also hate Amy. Now, although we have 6 different characters, the gameplay is pretty much broken into 3 different categories. You have Sonic and Shadow levels, which are very much similar to the levels you'd find in Sonic Adventure 1, good old fast-paced 3D Sonic gameplay. See how quickly you can get from point A to point B while defeating enemies and avoiding obstacles along the way. Next you have Knuckles and Rouge levels, where you must find 3 Chaos Emeralds or sometimes key pieces. These levels tend to be much more open and encourage a lot of exploration, though you do have a detector you can use to see when you're getting closer to a piece. And lastly, you have the Tails and Eggman levels. These ones are kind of similar to the Sonic levels, but a bit more slow-paced, a lot more shooting, and I would say they tend to have more puzzles as well. These puzzles are sometimes as simple as finding a hidden switch or button, but they're still puzzles nonetheless. All of these modes are pretty fun in their own way, although the Sonic levels were definitely my favorite. I love the speed and variety in areas. I probably would have enjoyed the Tails and Eggman levels more, but remember what I said earlier about the sound effects on the Steam version of the game being loud? Well, the most effective way to get through these levels is to just spam your fire button over and over. I actually had to just listen to my own music during the Tails and Eggman missions because of how awful it was to hear that high-pitched beep over and over again. And it's a shame too, because the music in this game is actually pretty great. The Knuckles and Rouge levels are also enjoyable, and since both of these characters have unique moves like flying or digging, they control differently enough from the Sonic levels to not feel stale, even if the flying does go crazy sometimes. Occasionally, instead of a traditional level, each one of these characters will have their own boss fight. There are quite a few repeats over the course of the 2 stories, but we do have unique dialogue that can make them enjoyable anyways. You fight giant golems, other characters, and even a giant ghost named King Boom Boo, which I vividly remember hating as a kid just because of how similar the name was to Nintendo's King Boo. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little upset about the name. There are also 2 driving levels where you either play as Rouge trying to catch up to some ship or something, or you play as Tails and you have to catch up to the President.
Spare me the details. Exactly just what is it that you want? Dr. Eggman.
Well, let's just get down to business then, shall we, Mr. President? I won't bore you with all the details.
Well, that is literally what I just asked for.
Can I also just take a minute to point out how much I hate how in video games, sometimes you'll absolutely obliterate a boss just for this to happen.
This time I'll let you go, but the next time we meet, you won't be so lucky.
I mean, come on now. I just scrambled the guy and now he's acting like he won? I could go off on a tangent about this kind of thing, but I'll save it for later. Another thing I have to go over is the multiplayer of this game. Do keep in mind that I do technically have the battle version of Sonic Adventure 2, and as such, there are some improvements to multiplayer. If you have the GameCube version, you'll have these already, and it's an optional DLC for a couple of dollars for any of the re-released versions. The multiplayer is pretty much the same stuff we experienced in the single player, but with a friend. You have the action race, where the player who reaches the goal first wins. Treasure hunt, where the first player to find 2 pieces of the Master Emerald win. And the shooting game, where the players duel using Eggman-type characters. There's also a kart racing game, but it's not exactly great, to be honest. Now there's one last portion that I know most people are waiting for. If you played this game as a kid, it may have even been one of your favorite parts of the game, and that's the Chow Garden. However, I never really got into it as a kid, and when making this video, I figured it was this simple little thing that I could get some basic footage for and then go over. But I was far from correct. My lord, is the Chow system complex. The only things I figured out during this playthrough was that you can go into the garden as each character from the story modes, which is actually really cool. Makes you wonder why Eggman even bothers building machines when he's as fast as Sonic. But anyways guys, I think I'm gonna make a separate video for the Chow Garden once I've gotten around to raising some chows of my own. That way you guys get a more legitimate video, and I get to experience the garden the way it was supposed to be experienced. Which brings us to the last section of this video, and that's where we go over the flaws of Sonic Adventure 2. I know it may seem like an absolutely perfect game.
Knuckles!
Hey guys, long time no see. I must have got lost in the mines.
Knuckles, you're in a sewer.
Where are we anyway?
You're in a sewer! Sonic Adventure 2 tends to suffer from some of the most common flaws of its time. Now normally I would say that when this game came out, it was so ahead of its time. Of course a game that's approaching 20 years old has these flaws. But sadly, this series is about whether a game is still good. First and foremost, and you all saw this coming, the camera. The camera in Sonic Adventure 2 is absolutely awful. You can control it with the triggers, which is horizontally inversed for some reason, but it quickly goes back to its state behind the character. Now this isn't a huge issue for some of the Sonic or Tails type levels because they're pretty linear and you're almost always moving forward. So having the camera behind you really doesn't affect much, with a couple of exceptions of course. But on the Knuckles and Rouge levels, it can be an absolute nightmare when you're looking for stuff or even just trying to get around the level. The next issue really comes down to bugs, such as collision not happening properly or dying right when you start the level. The saving grace here is that they were relatively uncommon in my playthrough, and when they did happen, they were pretty funny. Another pretty noticeable issue is that the characters constantly speak over each other. It's like something went wrong with the timing, or perhaps they didn't edit the timing from the Japanese dub, but characters just straight up don't wait for others to finish before they start speaking.
You're comparing yourself to me? Huh, you're not even good enough to be
I'll make you eat those words!
It doesn't seem intentional at all either, just kind of awkward. I would love to see this game completely remade from the ground up, because while the graphics have aged surprisingly well, it could definitely use some graphical upgrades. Well, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that this game is still just as good as today as it was back then? I'm gonna say that while it has some pretty glaring issues, the charm of the game and the decent gameplay make Sonic Adventure 2 totally worth playing today, but perhaps not the masterpiece some Sonic fans make it out to be. With a surprisingly intricate story, lovable characters, an amazing soundtrack, and sound effects that were way too loud in the re-release, I'd absolutely say pick this game up even if you've played it before. It's not only a nostalgia trip, but still a fun way to spend the day. And that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll get to the Chow Garden eventually, if ever, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a wonderful rest of your day.